Are you streaming tonight?
I took my daughter down to see a friend of hers in Shelby. She had a good time for a couple of days and came back and she's a junior here now. 16. She's captain of the West. Yes, she lives in Franklin. She's
I knew you would be here.
Hey, how you doing? That's all I'm trying to do.
Oh, young people. You the man with the plane? You mean they didn't lay the red carpet out?
No, the elves kept it up in. Right now, we just got in.
That's what. You better call the police. I think I remember you called it tonight. Will remain because you got like
Hey, yes, sir. Well, I asked you the other day whether y'all had the dry heels right here.
you know what? That's a good question. I'm thinking I was
Good Lord.
well, we go there at least once twice a month, RBN. But that's the closest one I know of. So that's a good question. I can't answer that.
Watch the thing at the house, and by the time you hang them out the windows, it be dry by the time you get back.
Oh, good.
She's a man right here, but
In the green?
How you doing? I gotta get back here to Larry. You know, Larry and I went to college together. I know you did. You said you first. Hey, how you doing? Hey, don't be wrong. And you know,
Lorraine ain't got no sense.
you can't hug my husband and not hug me. All right. If I have to.
I'll be there. Thank you. Thank you.
Over 50 years. Oh, you talking about the one back then? I was class of 73.
Mic check. Mic check. Let's try that again. Better.
Good evening. The time is about 6:05 p.m. So I would like for us to begin the Monday, December 29th, 2025 public meeting of the Southampton County School Board. We do have 6 of our school board members here. So we do have a quorum in terms of school board membership. But my name is Deborah Goodwin, and I am chairperson of the Southampton County School Board. So on behalf of the entire Southampton County School Board, I want to thank you for coming out tonight. I know that it's the holiday season, I know that it's cold, it's windy, so we appreciate your coming out and joining us tonight. The purpose of the public meeting tonight is to see a presentation or hear a presentation of the Southampton County School Board response to the 2025 Southampton County Board of Supervisors report concerning the school division. The report that you're going to hear tonight was prepared by attorneys from Sands Anderson, that's our legal counsel, and it will be presented by attorneys from Sands Anderson. Our legal counsel members present tonight are Mrs. Pamela O'Berry and Mr. Cullen Seltzer, and they will be providing the report tonight. So I will turn it over to them at this time.
Good evening, members of the school board and members of the Southampton community. I am here with my colleague, Cullen Seltzer, and we are delighted to represent the school board in all matters, and particularly in this matter that brings us here tonight. And I know, because I'm sure you all keep up with the news, this has been a matter that has been sort of on the agenda and in the news for quite some time. So we feel like, Cullen and I, we feel like it's a good time to sort of put some finality to this discussion. And so I want to talk a little bit before we begin the presentation about what we do, what Cullen and I try to do when we are asked to do an investigation. Our goal is to always be objective, to be unbiased, and to tell it straight, right? Our job is not to do a hit job on whoever might be in opposition or might not be on one side or another. And I can say for certain that over the last couple of weeks, I'm proud of the work that Cullen and I have done to meet all of those objectives, to help the school board sort of sort through the thousands and thousands of documents that became the basis of the Board of Supervisors report, to sort through the allegations and conclusions in the Board of Supervisors report, and to tell the full story. And that is, we are certainly very hopeful that once our presentation tonight, we're not going to walk you through a 33-page document. 33 pages, single space with, probably nearly 150 exhibits. We can't get you through all of that tonight. But what Cullen and I are going to do tonight is to give you the high points so that when you have access to this physical report to review for yourselves, your attention, we want to help you focus your attention on the things that were important in this report. And so tonight, that's what Cullen and I want to sort of help you sort of give you a guide for the document that you will have access to. And just as you're thinking, well, we're not going to get to see the document tonight. No, tonight you're not going to get to see the document. The document will be posted online on the Southampton County Public Schools and the school board's website after January 2nd, and that is just because certain documents need to be redacted prior to us making them available to you. So tonight you'll get the presentation and then you'll be able to read it for yourself after January 2nd. So again, I'm an attorney with Sands Anderson. My colleague Cullen Seltzer is also an attorney with Sands Anderson. And so we are going to give you a presentation that is the investigation we conducted regarding the allegations in the 2025 Southampton County Board of Supervisors report concerning, and when you see SCSB, of course you're going to see a lot of that in Southampton County School Board. Now, it's important to start sort of at the beginning for this, right? When a school board exists, it is not a matter of whether a school board wants to conduct its business and take up the business of overseeing its schools independently and with autonomy. It's not just something they decide to go sort of and do on their own. The Virginia Constitution makes it very clear who has the responsibility for overseeing the affairs of schools. And it is the school boards, right? There's no document more authoritative in Virginia than the Constitution, because everything flows from that. So Section 7 of Article 8, Section 7 of the Virginia Constitution makes very clear, school boards, the supervision of schools in each school division shall be vested in a school board to be composed of members selected in the manner for the term, possessing the qualifications and to the number provided by law. So it is not ambiguous. It is the school board, not the Board of Supervisors, not the federal government, not the VDOE, not state government, that oversees the day-to-day business and affairs of school divisions, just as it is, and that applies to Southampton as well. What are school board members' powers they have? Well, this is just some of them, but see that all the laws are enforced, be informed and take care of the schools and make sure they're being run efficiently, caring for and managing the school property, and other affairs that are specifically enumerated under 22.1-79. Now, one of the things that's really important, you know, as we go through the rest of this presentation, is to just talk about the financial operations of the school board and Southampton County Public Schools. Now, I know we think, oh, sure. Why is that important? Well, as I sort of wade into this issue almost a year ago, I was reading press reports and reading sort of other critiques of what was going on related to the schools and with the sort of community input. And I surely got the impression that it is the school division, Southampton County Public Schools, that has a big old bag of money, right? You get a budget, and the school gets this big bag of money, and they get a checkbook, and they are told, go forth and spend, with no oversight. That is, I mean, I knew that not to be true just because of what I do for a living, but that was the impression one would get from reading the news media. That is not the way Southampton County Public Schools finances are run, nor is that the way any school division in Virginia's finances are run. Southampton County School Board's finances are managed, processed, and overseen by the County Finance Department and the County Treasurer. Now, where does the County Finance Department sit? The County Finance Department sits under the day-to-day supervision of the County Administrator. And the County Administrator works at the will of the Board of Supervisors for the County of Southampton. The school board has no division-level financial accounts accessible to them without the County Finance Department and the Treasurer's oversight. Southampton County School Board's Finance Director, Ms. Joy Carr, has been a veteran in that position. She's been with Southampton County for more than 44 years, but she has been the Director of Finance for Southampton County for just around 35 years or so. All revenue that's received by Southampton County Public Schools or the school board doesn't get to stay in any checking account or any finance or anything that the school board gets to manage or the public or the division gets to manage. That gets remitted to the county treasurer. Like, well, what revenues would the school receive? That's things like for tuition paying out of division students, and any other income that comes into the school goes to the county treasurer. The county treasurer puts it on the books, and it is maintained and there's oversight of the finances by the county treasurer there. And all school board financial accounts are audited annually. Now that's important to because another important detail as we sort of walk through some of these other walk through the Board of Supervisors report. It's important to understand that Southampton County Schools, at least for the larger accounts, is audited as a component unit, and that's a legal phrase, of the county. The school division is only a part of the county. So as to all of its finances, its budgets, its expenditures, its revenues, when the county gets its annual audit, as they're required to do by law, the school board, the school division gets its audit as a part of the county's audit. So if the school board comes up with some problems in the audit, the county has problems in the audit because they're just an arm of the county's audit. So when you sort of hear that allegations that there might be financial mismanagement in the school board or the school division, you have to understand that that would also mean that there's been no oversight by the county or by the treasurer. And those audit points would be audit points against the county, not just against the school board. So it's important to kind of understand that. And the only other accounts that the school board has are building level, school level accounts that exist at each school for things like paper, operational costs, petty cash, that kind of thing, and or daycare funds or activity funds. And those are audited annually every year, audited annually as well, but separate from the larger audit that is done through the county. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind as you're thinking about, you know, what impression you've been given about what access the school board and the school division has had to funds. So how did we get here? How did we get to a point where tonight we're giving a presentation talking about the Board of Supervisors, which is the appropriating body for the school board, where the Board of Supervisors has requested and received a report that talks about how the financial management of the school division. How did we get here? Well, on August 27, 2024, the Board of Supervisors voted to engage an outside auditing firm to conduct a forensic audit of Southampton County Public Schools, of the division. And they made that vote, and after they made that vote, I believe it was a unanimous vote of the Board of Supervisors. They sent a letter to the superintendent and to the school board chair saying, we're going to conduct a forensic audit of the school division finances. Why did they say they wanted to do that? They said they wanted to do that based on community members and members of the public who had made allegations of financial mismanagement. There were allegations of theft, misappropriation. There were allegations that weren't just allegations saying we don't like the way you manage your money. There were actual allegations that there had been more nefarious criminal activity, or even at a minimum, sort of severe mismanagement of finances. So once the school board received that letter saying they were going to conduct a forensic audit, and a forensic audit is not just an audit, right? The annual audit that takes place every year is an audit that looks at how the money moves, is there proper oversight, is the money being spent as it's supposed to be spent, and is there proper documentation, all of those sort of administrative oversight. A forensic audit is a little different. And Cullen and I both come from a criminal law background, and we are very familiar with forensic audits and more in the realm of the criminal background. Forensic audits can do a lot of things, but in the way that it was proposed here, the forensic audit was proposed to investigate whether or not there was criminality or financial mismanagement of Southampton School Division funds. So the school board said no, right? Remember that Virginia Constitution that I just took you back to? They said the school board oversees the financial affairs of the division, and we feel confident in what's been taking place. So we don't want to submit our financial house to your management. The Constitution doesn't allow it. Virginia state law doesn't allow it. We are, by the law, the entity that oversees the finances of a school division. So they said no. And not only did they say no, they said, let's talk about whether or not, let's look into whether or not we have to submit to such a forensic audit. And so after review, the school board responded to the Board of Supervisors saying, no, you don't have any legal authority to compel us to submit to a forensic audit, which was legally correct. But the school board wrote, and I know you've heard that the school board didn't want to cooperate with any of this investigation, and that's just not true. From the outset, the school board said, and they wrote, we welcome the opportunity to discuss specific requests for information, right? They said, we're not going to submit to a forensic audit, but if you want to talk about our finances, if you want to take a look at our finances, tell us specifically what you want to know, and we welcome the opportunity to discuss it. That didn't happen. The Board of Supervisors said no, and they responded in November 12, 2024 by saying, we fully intend, by letter that went to the school board and school division superintendent, we fully intend to conduct a comprehensive investigation regardless of your level of cooperation. So despite not having the legal authority to conduct the audit that they wanted, despite the fact that the school board said, we will cooperate and we can discuss ways that we can give you the information you wanted, Board of Supervisors said no. And about a month later, they sent a FOIA request to the school board in December of 2024. Now, this was not your normal FOIA request. This was a FOIA request that requested documents going back as far as 10 years over all kinds of financial operations, receipts, documents, grant applications, grant award letters. And it was quite a comprehensive and massive FOIA request. And so from the documents, and I believe there were more than 14 or 16,000 documents that the school board ended up producing in the FOIA request, in response to the FOIA request, they created their report. And that is the report that we're responding to today. My colleague Cullen's gonna pick it up here.
Thank you, Pam. Madam Chair, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for having us today and for the opportunity to present the findings of this investigation. I know Pam and I very much appreciate the opportunity to have worked on the matter. What I want to do here for just a minute is to give you a very brief outline of what the investigation undertook, how we organized our report, and what the principal findings of the report were. We did not, as you can imagine, attempt to go into every nook and cranny of the Southampton County public schools and ask ourselves, is each and every employee, is each and every facility performing in a certain way or not? What we attempted to do was instead to go through the Board of Supervisors report and examine the Board of Supervisors report's conclusions and their evidence. As you no doubt have seen, the Board of Supervisors report was a lengthy report, and it attached numerous exhibits. And what our charge was to go through that report, assess what those conclusions were, and based not just on the evidence that the Board of Supervisors report attached as exhibits, but also on any additional questions that we had, any additional documents we required from the professionals, the professional staff at the school board, to ask ourselves, well, does this allegation that's been made, does this claim, this finding that was made in the Board of Supervisors report, is it accurate? Is it complete? Do we agree with it or do we disagree with it? Pam mentioned this at the outset, and I will just emphasize it again. Our brief, our remit was not to be advocates in opposition to the Board of Supervisors report. Our assignment was to look at the Board of Supervisors report and give our best candid response to it based on the information that we learned. We have been advocates in the past. I am an advocate in other cases, but that was not the assignment that was given to us in this case. In this case, what we were asked to do was to evaluate as objectively and as dispassionately as we could the information that was provided in the Board of Supervisors report, and as we requested it from the professionals at the Southampton County School Board and in the division. I will say, whenever we had a question in our own investigation, we got quick and complete responses from everybody at the Southampton County School Board and the professional staff there in response. We didn't have to fight anybody, we didn't have to send a FOIA request, we didn't have to do anything like that. When we had a question, we got forthright and complete responses. And when we had follow-up, we got good follow-up responses as well. With that by way of background, these are our principal findings. The first finding is we did not find any evidence of any criminal conduct in connection with the behavior of Southampton County School Board officials or staff. Pam is a former prosecutor. I have been a criminal defense attorney. Both of us know what crime looks like. We have plenty of experience in that. We didn't see any evidence of that at all. Importantly, our impression that there was no criminal activity was consistent with the Board of Supervisors report that came to the same conclusion. So the Board of Supervisors report did not identify any instance of criminal misconduct. We did not identify any instance of criminal misconduct. We also found no evidence of systemic deficiencies in the conduct of the affairs of the Southampton County School Board. It would be absurd to say that in any organization, certainly an organization that tends to the needs of thousands of children in multiple buildings with a significant enterprise like this, it would be absurd to say that there are not mistakes. Of course there are mistakes. Every human enterprise involves mistakes. But as we looked at the allegations of either neglect or misconduct identified in the Board of Supervisors report, we did not identify any systemic reasons for mistakes. So we didn't identify that there was a department referenced in the Board of Supervisors report that was profoundly mismanaged, or that there was endemic waste of money. We certainly identified situations where the division could have been improved if it had more money. We certainly identified situations where this division could be improved if it had more personnel. In that regard, we think it is similar to every school division in the country. But we did not identify systemic deficiencies in the conduct of the school board or its professional staff. Our assessment was that there was substantial compliance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Although there are opportunities in the administration and compliance with the Freedom of Information Act that could be improved. What you just saw on the screen were messages from my computer. I don't really have an explanation for that. The Board of Supervisors report identified a handful of instances, and we'll be discussing these in greater detail, but we found no evidence of systemic failures in compliance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And with respect to financial operations, our finding is that the school board's financial operations are secure and they are accurate for some of the reasons that Pam has already said and that we will be discussing in greater detail shortly. Our fifth finding is that grant management, that is financial grants that are awarded to the school board, that the management of those awards for the benefit of the school board is being done appropriately. Again, this is, each of these findings tracks subjects and findings made in the Board of Supervisors report. We did not attempt to make findings or do research outside the scope of the Board of Supervisors report, at least outside the subject matters addressed in that report. But our finding was that the grant management is being handled appropriately, again, for reasons that Pam has already discussed and will discuss in greater detail. The school board treats its employees appropriately in our findings. The Board of Supervisors report identified in some instances, some situations where there were employees who were dissatisfied with one issue or another. In our review of those allegations, we found that in all of them, the concerns have been appropriately redressed. That is to say, in all of them that we could identify, the Board of Supervisors report in this regard relied on a number of anonymous reports that did not make themselves susceptible to independent or outside verification or analysis. So to the extent that we could assess them on their merits, we did. We did not identify situations that had not been appropriately redressed. The Board of Supervisors made allegations that there were maintenance issues associated with school facilities. Our assessment was that to the extent there are issues regarding either maintenance or renovation or improvement or investment associated with the school division's aging infrastructure, and therefore sure are those instances, the school board and its professional staff diligently attempt to address those to the extent financial limitations permit. Our finding included the finding that questions having to deal with safety and health receive the first level of attention. Questions that don't relate to safety and health of students and staff get a lower priority assigned to them, and as you may well imagine, get attended to as both time and resources, and in particular financial resources, permit. And then our last finding is that as a general matter, cooperation between the Board of Supervisors and the school board and school stakeholders, open, respectful, candid cooperation is a benefit to the community, it's a benefit to the students and the families that the school division serves. It is our strong impression that that culture has not been a successful culture to be developed, that there's room for improvement on that. We will leave it to all of you, and to the leaders you have elected, to decide where you wish to assign blame for that breakdown in culture. What I will say is that, as Pam has already indicated, requests for forensic audit, FOIA requests for tens of thousands of pages of documents, it sounds and feels adversarial. It has resulted, in our impression, in a culture of suspicion and distrust, and as you all know, it has resulted in a situation where the attention of elected and appointed leaders, the attention of the division's professional staff is frequently redirected from the mission of the school board to attend to the needs of the students and families who come to the schools for service, and instead been refocused on, questions that have to do with internal disputes between the school board and the board of supervisors. And it would be better for all concerned, but primarily for the students and families served by the division, if that was not the case. With that overview in mind, the next part of our presentation is going to be given over to some of the specific sections that I just described, and that again track the Board of Supervisors report. The first of which is the allegation in the Board of Supervisors report that the division did not properly comply with Freedom of Information Act requests. That has, again, that was not our finding. Our finding is inconsistent with the Board of Supervisors report in this regard. Our finding is that the division has appropriate staff and has appropriate processes for timely and correctly responding to Virginia Freedom of Information Act requests as they arrive. Many of you may know that the Virginia Freedom of Information Act is Virginia's public access law. That's the law that says that citizens are entitled to know what their local government and state government officials and bodies are doing. It is, in almost every instance, an extremely expensive law to comply with. And you can imagine why, right? If somebody says, show me all the documents that relate to the new bathroom that was installed at such and such a school. That information may be on a half dozen different computers. It may be in a half dozen different file folders. It may be at the school involved. It may be at the central office. It may be electronically stored with outside vendors. It can be, who are nevertheless custodians for purposes of the act. Aggregating all that information, responding to those document requests. The document requests are lawful and people are entitled to a response, but compliance with all of that is time-consuming and expensive. The division has engaged appropriate personnel to do that work. Even though it is a state law that the Freedom of Information Act to be complied with, the state does not provide separate funding for personnel to administer. So this is an expense that not just Southampton County schools have to internally absorb, all public bodies in Virginia have to absorb it, but they have to absorb it. And my personal opinion doesn't matter. I think the Virginia Freedom of Information Act is an excellent law, but I know that it comes at a cost, and it comes at a cost to our school division because you have to have people doing it. Our finding was that the school division appropriately responds to those. There was a single instance in the Board of Supervisors report that identified an instance of non-compliance with the Freedom of Information Act. And that was with regard to the FOIA. FOIA is the abbreviation, right, for Freedom of Information Act. That was with regard to the FOIA request that was submitted to the school board by one of the Board of Supervisors lawyers on December 23rd of 2024. I mentioned the date because, as you may have already concluded or noted, December 23rd of 2024 was the first day of the winter holiday beginning in 2024. As such, the central office was thinly staffed during that period of time. I've already explained how time-consuming and difficult a FOIA request response can be. The FOIA request in this case had 16 or more different categories and requested thousands of different documents. And as I say, it arrived on the very first day of the winter break. It arrived without notice to the lawyers who had been talking to the Board of Supervisors counsel during this period of time leading up to it. We weren't copied on that request. And there is, to this day, a circumstance that candidly I have not seen before in a Freedom of Information Act request. The request was sent by certified mail and arrived at the school board's post office box. Somebody picked up that certified mailing and signed for it. The signature purported to be the name of a man named Mr. Witt, who is the regular employee at the school division who picks up mail from the post office. What we have discovered is that that signature was a forgery. We don't know who signed it. Mr. Witt explained to us that he did not pick it up, he did not work that day, and in fact, attendance records confirmed that he did not work that day. When we compared the signature on the receipt to other signatures that Mr. Witt had made, typically on timesheets, it wasn't the same signature. I'm not a handwriting expert, but I've seen lots of handwriting, and it's clear that it's just a different signature. We don't know who signed for that certified letter that had the FOIA request. And I don't know that we'll ever know the answer to that. What we do know is that the letter itself, the FOIA request itself, was not discovered by the FOIA officer on her desk until somewhere around January 6th or January 8th. By which time the response was already too late. Any response would be already too late. I haven't seen unusual circumstances like this involving a FOIA request. Pam and I have both served on Virginia's Freedom of Information Act Advisory Council, but I don't pretend to have a voluminous knowledge of every FOIA request that's ever been delivered in the Commonwealth before, but I've never seen anything like that. It was weird, and it put the school division in the position of being non-compliant with FOIA right from the get-go. As I say, in the Board of Supervisors report that alleged that the school division was not compliant with FOIA, this was the only example provided in that report of non-compliance. It is technically correct that the school board was non-compliant in this instance, but under circumstances that, as I say, are very unusual, and it's very difficult for me to imagine would repeat themselves. In the months that followed from that, the school board, in fact, complied with the FOIA request. After lengthy negotiations back and forth with counsel for the Board of Supervisors, both on how much the school board would charge for producing those records, and over what period of time, and in what the nature of the request would be. Those kinds of negotiations are common, and they happened in this case. Ultimately, this matter did go to court, and as I said, because the timeliness was impossible, given a timely response was impossible, given the nature of how the request was ultimately delivered to the school board or to personnel at the school board's office, the court found that the school board's response was not timely. The court also found that the school board's cost estimate for how much it would cost to provide the records requested was unreasonably high. Ultimately, the school board and the Board of Supervisors agreed that an appropriate fee for records production was $9,884. Because the Board of Supervisors prevailed in the court hearing, they were awarded attorney's fees that the court ordered the parties to come to an agreement, and if the parties couldn't come to an agreement on what the attorney's fees would be, the court would decide the matter. After lengthy negotiations and discussions about attorney's fees, the parties agreed that the attorney's fees that the school board would owe to the Board of Supervisors was $10,000. When you subtract the $9,884 that the Board of Supervisors paid for the production from the $10,000 that the school board was required to pay the Board of Supervisors, the net amount of the financial dispute that took many, many months to litigate, the net amount ended up being approximately $116. When I said before that it would be better if there was a culture of cooperation between the parties, that fight over $116 is what I had in mind. Our recommendation is that it is, although the school board is compliant, that it is appropriate for the school board to continue to develop systems for timely collection and response to Virginia Freedom of Information Act requests, and to formalize procedures for properly calculating what the cost of records production should be. Thank you.
So I see that our, in producing our report, or the PowerPoint, my tabs have jumped over, so the Hampton Roads workforce. So we're going to talk about the response to the grant management section of the Board of Supervisors report. And this was what I would say the meat and potatoes of the report. And as you look at my graphic here, I apologize, what's in parentheses should be to the right underneath, like where it says American Rescue Plan Grant, it should say ESSER under that, because that's the name, just like SCAP should be to the right, and PBIS should be to the right. I think it jumped in when we finalized the draft. But anyway, the Board of Supervisors report went to great lengths to talk about management of grant funding. And I don't know, I suspect management of grant funding was the place that, because the anonymous and sometimes cited community members said that there was some mismanagement or misappropriation of funds. And so they requested thousands and thousands of documents related to these 8 grants that you see here. The Hampton Roads Workforce Council grant, the Teachers for Tomorrow grant, the Camp Foundation grant, the 21st Century grant, American Rescue Plan grant, also known as ESSER, Federal Perkins 5 grant, the School Construction Assistance Program grant, also known as SCAP, and the Positive Behavioral Intervention Support grant, PBIS. So there were many documents that were received and reviewed by the Board of Supervisors Council in the creation of the report. And there were some trends, I would say, that I noted in the report's findings related to the grants. Some of the themes that I noticed were that, again, and we can't say this too many times tonight, there was zero criminality or financial misuse of any grant funds or any money in this case, zero. And many times, it was very curious in the Board of Supervisors report, they might spend 2 pages articulating what the allegations were with great specificity, right? They would say, community members said that this grant, these funds were not appropriately accounted for, these funds were not carried over into the next budget year, what happened to this money? They would spend 2 pages of the report making very explicit allegations. And at the end of those 2 pages, they would say, however, our review found there was no misappropriation or misuse of the funds, right? So they spent 2 pages making allegations, and then there'd be 1 sentence that exonerated the school board and the school division related to that allegation. Now, I don't know about you, but that just seems a little bit unfair and disproportionate. But what we also found, before I kind of get into that a little bit, what we found was that the school board's grant administration has layers and layers and layers of oversight. When grant funds come, whether it's grant funds can come from the federal government, and generally when they come from the federal government, they go through the VDOE, and VDOE provides it to the school division. And so you will have the school division, one, setting up a grant manager. That grant manager is accountable to their supervisor. That supervisor is accountable for the money to the county finance department in terms of submission of reimbursement funds and balancing the books. Then the state also has oversight and audits those funds, and sometimes even the federal government, depending on the type of grant, has a say in how the grant funds are spent. So those processes we found to be consistent and for the most part compliant. And again, as Cullen said, in any system made of humans, there is error. Would I love to come here and tell you that we found that there was never an error made by Southampton County Public Schools or their staff? I mean, I'd like to say that about anybody, but you know, again, we're objective. Of course there were errors. Were there systemic errors? Absolutely not. And the Board of Supervisors report could not even say that there were systemic errors. One of the other things we found was that there was a regular auditing of all grant funds. And when there were negative findings or something was where the school division fell short, we found evidence of prompt response and corrective action when cited. And I guess one of the things I didn't say clearly is when we say we found, what we found, we analyzed documents, right? We didn't just decide, you know, Cullen, you and me, let's sit together and think, do we think the school did this thing that they're accused of? That's not the way the investigation worked. We went to the documents. And I can tell you I spent more hours than I care to cite deep in the weeds of the finances of these grants. And one consistent theme was that when there was a negative audit finding, whether it was from the state or from an audit, there was prompt corrective action that was taken by the school division, and you'll see that in the report specifically. We saw another theme in the Board of Supervisors report related to grant management, and I won't say much more than Cullen said, is there were repeated citations of anonymous sources. This community member said this, that community member said that, very frequently not cited. So it makes it very difficult for us to assess, does that person have bias? Does that person have reason to lie? Or does that person have absolute knowledge, basis of knowledge, and credibility? We don't know when it's an anonymous source. We can't test it. What we also found to be a consistent theme in these 8 grants that we reviewed, not in all of them, but many of the grants went from a period just before COVID, sometime around 2017, 2018, till after. And there were times, obviously, when COVID impacted the ability for the school division to spend down a grant. For instance, one of the grants was provided for after-school tutoring and after-school activities for the students. Obviously, after March 2020, students were not coming to school. So if you have a grant that's a $150,000 grant for after-school activities, and you're supposed to spend that money by June of 2020, that money is not going to be spent. And so the money either in specific grants was carried over to the next year, or just if the grant lapsed, then it couldn't be used. But there were many cases where that was a negative finding where they said, you didn't spend down this grant, therefore you can't get the grant again. Well, that was a situation that many schools found themselves in as an impact of COVID-19. What we also found as a theme in the Board of Supervisors report is that many times the Board of Supervisors report showed evidence of misunderstanding of the financial records that they were reviewing. Many times they called grants reimbursement grants when they were not reimbursement grants, and many times there were grants that were reimbursement grants that they considered other grants. They didn't seem to have an understanding of how certain grant funds can be carried over into the next year. They would look at a ledger and say, you had, in one particular case, $48,000 left from a $50,000 grant. What happened to that money? You didn't spend it. We only have receipts for $2,000. There were many, in that particular instance, there was, the Board of Supervisors report failed to verify that $48,000 is sitting in the treasurer's office as a restricted fund that is restricted for the use purposes of the grant in the future, because the grant allowed it to be carried over and held until it's used. So again, those were some of the things that we found in the report. Again, as I said earlier, we found that many times the allegations made against the school board and the school division were amplified, but the exonerations related to those allegations were minimized. Big allegations, small exonerations. And one of the things that's really, really important here, because I think this was the biggest one with financial impact, and I can tell you I was there the night the Board of Supervisors report was presented. And I heard audible sort of gasps in the room when they talked about the fact that, as alleged, that the school division lost $5.5 million for the SCAP grant related to construction of the Capron Elementary School. And it was very clearly stated there that they lost it because the school division failed to move forward, failed to advise the Board of Supervisors that they were applying for the grant. They failed to advise them that they needed the Board of Supervisors to take action on the grant for it to move forward, and that ultimately it was the inaction of the school board and the school division that caused the $5.5 million to be lost. And I don't know about you, but in any community, $5.5 million can do a lot of good for a lot of kids. And particularly when you're talking about a school that Capron Elementary, I believe, more than 50 years old, and was in great need of replacement or repair. When you read the documents, and I spent more time on this issue than on any other because it was important, because it had big financial impact, and it had a wow factor in the Board of Supervisors report. We have the receipts, and they do not point to the school board or the school division being at fault for the SCAP grant being lost, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think that is probably one of the most important things that, if you read nothing else in this report, read the section that talks about how the SCAP grant was lost. So again, a couple of the grants were impacted by COVID-19. The Hampton Roads Workforce Council grant is a special purpose grant that comes from the Hampton Roads Workforce Development Board, and it helps school divisions provide strategic workforce development solutions to help the students get into the workforce community. They had that grant in 2019 for $135,000. There was a lack of activity. Again, this was one impacted by COVID. In 2019 is when the grant came in, and obviously 2020 COVID came, and the school division was not able to, they had problems with, one, getting participants in the program, and two, in June of 2020, they lost their longtime grant administrator for this, June of 2021. It took many months for the school division to find someone to fill that position, and when they did finally find someone in November, that person had difficulty getting participants in the program. And so, as a result of the school division not being able to sort of get the program up and running in June 2021, and you know, we all remember June 2021, right? We were still coming out of COVID. We were still, I believe, in a hybrid school situation. So as a result of those difficulties with getting a program manager and getting enrollees, the school division did lose access to that grant February 2022. Now, one of the things, and I will cite this just because this is what the staff attributed to their reason for not reapplying. They were eligible to reapply for the grant, but they did not reapply for the grant after they lost it because there was I try to say this as objectively, there was a belief by the staff that because just prior to losing the grant, one of the members of the Board of Supervisors had been appointed to the Hampton Roads Council, and they had believed that they would not get refunded because their grant would have been in the hands of a member of the Board of Supervisors. I don't know that to be true, but that was one of the reasons cited by staff as to why they did not reapply for the Hampton Roads grant. The Teachers for the 21st Century grant was also another grant that was impacted by COVID. It was a grant that, it was a 3-year grant that had annual continuation awards contingent on a number of factors. And the Board of Supervisors report made several allegations suggesting that there was mismanagement of the 21st Century grant. It said that community members, again, anonymous community members, raised concerns about underreporting and potential misuse of funds. And this is one that, despite them dedicating several pages to talking about the allegations, after they went through all of the allegations, they said, upon comparing the 21st Century Grant awards with Southampton's corresponding annual budgets, there do not appear to be any significant discrepancies. Our review Cullen and I's review confirmed that position as well. So again, that was an instance where the grant had some issues related to, or delay issues related to COVID-19, but ultimately the Board of Supervisors report found, and our review of those same documents found, there was absolutely no mismanagement of those funds. ESSER funds were another, and ESSER funds were funding that were provided to, and that's probably the most common, popular one that most folks would know. Those are the funds that came down, the American Rescue funds, after COVID hit and school divisions and other local governments were heavily impacted. These were grants that were provided to sort of do COVID recovery. There were ESSER 1 grants, ESSER 2 grants, and ESSER 3. So ESSER 3 was the third sort of installation of the grants. In this case, the allegation that the Board of Supervisors report made related to the ESSER funds was that staff said that the ESSER funds had not been used to buy sanitation equipment that certain staff had requested. They didn't cite any staff names so that we could verify that. They just said that. And then they also said that the school division had said they would, in their application, said they would use the ESSER funds on certain projects. Again, they went through allegations after allegation after allegation, only to come back and conclude and have their own experts. And the Board of Supervisors said they retained 2 educational experts to look at their report and their allegations. Their experts concluded that not only Southampton County Public Schools, but almost every school that received ESSER funds had a proposed list of projects, and then during sort of responding to COVID, realized, oh, we can't do that, but what we can do is this with the ESSER funds. And so they repurposed and they reprogrammed how they would spend their ESSER funds depending on what the specific needs were. And the expenditures that the school division made, while they did change over time from what their original projection for use of the funds was, all of the use of the funding was consistent with what ESSER was designed for. So that was one of the things that, again, where they spent a lot of time talking about allegations, and then the school division ultimately exonerated the school division, but did it sort of in a very, very minimal way. Another one of the grants impacted by COVID was the Positive Behavior Intervention Supports grant. And I will just sort of give you the bottom line on that grant. On that grant, one of the allegations was that the school division had used funds, grant funds, for a wellness room for staff. And they said that this was mismanagement because I believe there was a massage chair or something else in the wellness room for the staff. This was, in a normal situation, would we want grant funds being used to benefit staff, or do we want grant funds being used to benefit children? Of course, in a normal world, in a non-COVID world, that's probably all that a grant would be allowed to be used for, is for students. But in this case, because of, and it's in the documents, we cite to the documents, the grant itself specifically said that the funds could be used for self-care for staff. And so the report sort of alleges that using those funds in that way was a violation of the grant and was a misuse of the funds. When we dug into the documents and we provided, as I said, every time we say something that's, whether it's good or bad for the school division, we cite it to the document. You're going to be able to look at the document yourself. The document had an attachment that had specifically allowable uses of the grant, and included in the allowable uses of the grant were self-care items for staff. So again, allegations would be made about how the school division used funds. Ultimately, the documents would say, yes, those uses were consistent with the purposes of the grant. So there was not misuse of the grants. Again, I just covered how many parts of the report, and you can read it for yourself. You will find that there are many times I had to cite in my report, in light of the fact that the Board of Supervisors report disproved its own allegation of misuse of funds, the inclusion of the allegation in the report is misguided at best, right? If someone accuses you of something, and then someone comes and investigates whether you've done that thing, should there be a report about the thing that someone said you did that they ultimately proved that you didn't do, right? Because you can never unring that bell. Once someone says that you've stolen or you've misappropriated, it doesn't matter that 6 months later you are exonerated of it. What people always remember is the accusation. So that was one of the main sort of problems that I had with sort of the investigative and reporting approach found here. So again, and I don't want to take up too much time with this, but I think the SCAP grant is really, really important. And all of the things I just said about the other grants, please read the grant section really, really carefully, because that's where the meat and potatoes of this document is. All of the allegations of misuse of funds, misappropriation of funds, criminality related to funds, not a single bit of evidence proving that. But even if we got to a point where we said, okay, they didn't misappropriate any money and they were using their grant funds as intended, that still left this really big issue out here. Did Southampton County Public Schools by inaction, cause the county and its children to lose access to $5.5 million towards building a new elementary school? The report alleges in 2023, the school division took no substantive action for 10 months. That is false, and I'm going to show you why. The report also says the Board of Supervisors had just over a month to evaluate the grant proposal. That is false, and I'm going to show you why. This report also said the actions of the school division caused the Board of Supervisors caused the Board of Supervisors' decision not to convene a meeting regarding getting the literary loan funds. That is false. I'm saying that to you, and the report has the receipts, the documents, but some of them you're going to see. The report also said that the division's failure to act in a timely manner led to the loss of the grant. That is false. The report also said that this SCAP grant, when the grant was lost from the 23-24 cycle, when it came back again as available in 2025, the report says the school division once again didn't act timely, so we lost the grant again in 2025. That is false. The documents tell the story. So when they say that the school division took no action, no substantive action for 10 months, what is the real story? The grant was awarded to the school division on June 28, 2023. By July 25th, less than a month later, the county administrator, Mr. Thrower, was writing to the Board of Supervisors, and the exhibits, you'll have them, you can read them for yourself. The county administrator, Mr. Thrower, wrote to the Board of Supervisors saying, we were just informed recently, within the last month of this, that the school system is getting this award. We met with the school administration. So less than a month later, not only did the Board of Supervisors know about it, the school division had met with the county administrators. Everything was happening to move this forward. So what else did Mr. Thrower advise the Board of Supervisors? He said, so what I would recommend to the Board of Supervisors is just kind of sit tight. The school system is putting some information together, substantive action by the school division. Davenport is a company, a consulting company that helps public bodies figure out how to finance big projects, right? So they tell you about how to manage the debt, how to get funding. They're just sort of a one-stop shop for helping public bodies get financing. So Davenport is putting some information together. So in the next few months, we'll have some more information for you. So this is July, and right, the ball's in Davenport's court, right? They've got to figure out whether the county has the money to finance this school. August 15th, Mr. Thrower writes to the board, updates the Board of Supervisors again. He says, Davenport is attempting to get more information on timelines and requirements for the Board of Supervisors and school board to authorize moving forward on the project. Also, they said Davenport advises the Board of Supervisors conduct a rate study and that the Board of Supervisors pursue a literary loan. They said this in September. So there were two things that had to happen, right? This $5.5 million was a reimbursement grant that was available, could be made available to the school, but it could only be made available to the school if the county put up the money for the project, which would have been a total of like $18.5 million. So that the school division would then spend $5 and be reimbursed $5, and then the county would have to pay the rest of it. So Davenport was saying, okay, we got to help the school county. We'll help you figure out how to do this. One of the ways you can do it is this $18 million that you have to have up front. We can get you help you get a favorable literary loan at 2%, right? A very, very good loan rate because Davenport, Mr. Thrower, the county administrator, school division, everybody's working hand in hand to move this thing forward. Everybody wanted this done. Come April 16, 2024, the report alleges that the actions of the board caused the Board of Supervisors' decision not to convene a meeting regarding the literary loan application. So everything's moving forward. Davenport's working. I believe they even brought in an attorney who was bond counsel for the Board of Supervisors, who was helping figuring out all the legal logistics about how to get this project moving. So on April 16, 2024, after all of those folks had been sort of working behind the scenes, and BDOE was included in this, they were the ones providing the funds. They said, yes, the funds are still going to be available through this time period. You're not late, Southampton. Everybody's kind of just getting their applications in. So the money's still available. So Mr. Thrower advises the Board of Supervisors that the school system can move forward accordingly should the Board of Supervisors authorize such by way of the requested resolution to apply for literary loan funds. Right, so Mr. Thrower is telling the Board of Supervisors, you just need to do a resolution to say you're going to move forward with this, and we've got all the finances figured out. Mr. Thrower then says the Board of Supervisors would need to set a special called meeting to discuss the project with the school system. As of right now, we are looking at the nights of May 7th and May 8th, that would be 2024, to hold this meeting pending the board's availability. So Mr. Thrower gets that meeting set up for May 7th. Called meeting, school division was prepared to be there, everybody was prepared to be there, Davenport, the lawyers from bond counsel. And then on May 6th, Mr. Thrower, that works for the Board of Supervisors, wrote an email. Please note, I was informed this afternoon by Chairman Edwards that he and other board members have canceled this meeting. Lynette, being the Chief Financial Officer and the Deputy County Administrator, and I have been coordinating with Davenport and Company, the school system, and bond counsel to prepare for this meeting. And when you see this as bold and underlined, I didn't bold and underline that. This was Mr. Thrower expressing the urgency of the issue to the people that he worked for, the Board of Supervisors. He said, as such, should you not meet to consider adoption of the literary loan application resolution, you, the Board of Supervisors, risk and most likely will miss out on utilizing the $5.5 million grant the school system received to build a new elementary school. So the money's there, waiting for BDOE to wash it down to Southampton if the Board of Supervisors did its part. And so he had been told by his bosses, they're canceling the meeting, they're not moving forward with it. So then Mr. Thrower then advises everyone sort of on the team that had been working to get this project going, all in an email, all please see below. With the meeting being canceled by the board chairman and other board members, it appears this project will not be moving forward. So when you read in the Board of Supervisors report that inaction by the school division and the school board caused that $5.5 million to be lost to the citizens of Southampton, that is just provably false by the documents. And the documents that I just cited to, those are not documents that came to Cullen and I, just Cullen and I, after we started looking at the Board of Supervisors report. These were documents that the Board of Supervisors Council had available to them too when they said the things that they said about who caused that $5.5 million to be lost. So I just want, if you walk away with nothing else, walk away with the clarity of that thought about how those funds were lost and why a report would come out saying that it was the fault of the school board. If it were true, I'd stand here and I'd say, you know what, I reviewed the documents and it's true, the school division did drop the ball. That's not the case. So just very briefly, the grant came back available in 2025, right, just this year. And as it was coming up, the school division staff said, okay, Board of Supervisors didn't do it before, let's really make a hard push for them to see the importance of this. So what did the school division do? Before the grant was even open, but the school division knew it was coming available, the school division wrote a letter to the Board of Supervisors in March of 2025 and said, I implore you to see the opportunity we have in our hands today. Recently, BDOE invited school divisions to apply for the fiscal year 2025 SCAT. Additionally, last week, the BDOE announced that the literary fund loan application window has been opened. By combining the supports of these two programs, we, capital letters, have the opportunity to make a meaningful change to the trajectory of Southampton County. The application deadlines are, as cited there. Not only did they write this letter, in April, they wrote another letter to the Board of Supervisors, even more sort of urgently and asking for their support in moving this forward. Not only did they do that, in April when they went up for a budget work session, and it's cited to here, you can click on the link that will take you to the Board of Supervisors budget meeting where school division staff made a presentation to the board asking them to appropriate money and move this project forward. Once again, for a reason that has not been publicly announced to my knowledge, the Board of Supervisors again did not move forward with allowing that grant to be accessed by the school division, and that is why Cape Breton Elementary doesn't have a budget funding plan at this point. So if you remember nothing else about tonight's presentation, just know that we objectively looked at the same documents that the Board of Supervisors Council looked at, and none of the things that I just cited to you were cited in the report. In fact, there were parts of an email that they did cite to, but not the other part, which means I know they looked at the document because one part was cited and not the part that made clear what actually happened to the grant. So I would just say, as you work through the document, please pay good attention to the grant funding pieces, because that's the money, and that's why this whole thing seemed to have gotten started. And from our review, there's just no there.
That's a very difficult act to follow. Thank you, Pam. As Pam says, the most serious and the most comprehensive portions of the Board of Supervisors report did have to do with financial management and grant management. So I would just reiterate the point that Pam just made, that really is the most important allegation that we had occasion to assess in our own review of the Board of Supervisors report. There are two additional areas that the Board of Supervisors report addressed. They addressed them in relatively short fashion and in relatively perfunctory fashion, so I will spend a commensurate amount of time speaking to them. One area of the Board of Supervisors report included allegations that the division doesn't treat its employees appropriately. We were not in a position, and we were not asked to assess the satisfaction of each and every individual employee of the division or of employees writ large. What we were asked to do was to assess the allegations specific to this issue that were included in the Board of Supervisors report itself. And what we identified, consistent with what Pam just described when it comes to grant management and financial management issues, is that there is a significant overgeneralization about employee satisfaction from a relatively small handful of complaints, and consistent with other allegations in the Board of Supervisors report, a significant reliance on anonymous complaints, including anonymous complaints from former employees, making it almost impossible to independently assess their legitimacy. In the instances, however, where there was some specific information, and there were really just two, we were able to address those and make further inquiry. The first one that the Board of Supervisors report laid claim to was that certain stipends that employees are entitled to had been delayed on certain occasions. And the information we received back from the professional staff was that there had been an incident with a handful of stipend requests. Either the requests were not themselves timely submitted, or because of a processing error, they were not timely reviewed. There were in fact mistakes, either on the employee side or on the administration of the stipend reimbursement request side. But in all events, the employees who are entitled to stipends did ultimately get the stipends that they had requested and that they were eligible for. It was not our impression that we would, in the course of this investigation, find that each and every action by the bureaucracy of a large organization like this one would be done perfectly and completely and correctly each and every time it was asked. What we were looking for was evidence of systemic failures or evidence of bad faith. And we didn't find that with respect to this stipend question at all. The Board of Supervisors report also said that there had been a lawsuit filed by current and former employees of the school division alleging improper payment of wages. And the Board of Supervisors report said it candidly acknowledged that the lawsuit had been dismissed, but it said the fact that the lawsuit had been filed was an indication of pervasive problems in the school division. What the Board of Supervisors report didn't say, though, is why the lawsuit got dismissed. In the court records that attend that court filing, that lawsuit, the judge who heard the case, issued an opinion. And in that opinion, the judge found that there was no contract that the employees could lawfully rely upon that would give them a property right to enable them to sue the school division. Which is to say that the employees who filed that lawsuit did not have a legally valid claim. And so the lawsuit got dismissed. I don't begrudge anybody asking the courts to remedy some injury they think they have received. But if the courts say you don't have a valid claim, and these employees didn't appeal that to a higher court to get that reviewed somewhere, then the correct inference is that the school board was correct in not paying those claims. So we did not find that lawsuit that was dismissed by a court for having not lawfully alleged a valid claim for recovery. We did not find that dismissed lawsuit was evidence of misconduct or mistreatment by the school board. We were also apprised that it is the practice of school leadership on the professional staff's part to regularly seek feedback from employees, advice and input about how work is going, how things can be improved, and we did not receive information that there were employees who felt they did not have those opportunities, at least not in any widespread way that would suggest, again, any systemic difficulties. Our recommendation in light of those findings was that the school board and the professional leadership should continue to make efforts to reach out to employees to make sure that the division is providing a place where fulfilling and meaningful work can continue to be done by everybody involved in the school system, which, as we've already said, has many of the same challenges that all school systems do, not least of which is a paucity of funding. Which brings me to the last substantive issue that the Board of Supervisors report addressed, and that is whether or not the school board diligently addresses school facilities. And we found that the school board and the professional staff, based on the information that was provided to us, does address facilities concerns as expeditiously and as meaningfully as financial and resource limitations permit. The division prioritizes physical plant concerns that raise health and safety considerations over other considerations, and it does so in a division where the physical facilities are aging. Limited financial resources exist to address these. Limited staff is available to address these. There are custodial staff in each building, and there are maintenance staff division-wide. There were times when there were significantly more maintenance staff available to tend to maintenance needs, and by maintenance needs, I'm talking about very often skilled trades work that not just sort of cleaning and tidying, but things that you would need a properly trained and experienced tradesman, a plumber, or a carpenter to do more difficult work that is both expensive and resources that are both difficult to acquire. There is just limited availability for those services. The school division has engaged private contractors to attempt to mitigate some of those concerns, again, constrained by limited financial resources. Our impression is that balancing the capital needs with pedagogical needs, other student and family needs, is difficult in the Southampton County Public Schools, as it is for all school divisions. We did not identify any instance, and the Board of Supervisors report did not identify any instance where that balance between physical infrastructure needs and pedagogical needs, on the other hand, had been improperly struck, where somebody said, boy, you spent too much on teachers when you really should have been spending more on parking lots, or you didn't spend enough on ADA access when you should have been spending less on students. We didn't see evidence of systemic miscalculation or negligent assessment of those priorities, or certainly any evidence of willful misassessment of those priorities. And, you know, in terms of the last observation, the last finding that we make, I won't recap it extensively, but cooperation between these two entities, the school board and the Board of Supervisors, could not be more important. Virginia is weird in how we do this. The school board has the obligation to manage the schools, but it doesn't have any ability to raise money of its own. Money has to come from the locality it serves, from the Commonwealth, and from the federal government, and from other grant sources where you can find them. But the school board itself doesn't raise money. So there has to be a cooperative effort. Freedom of Information Acts, demands for audits, public announcements of report findings. The Board of Supervisors report was not provided to the school board before its publication. We asked for that. We said, if you have questions, let us know. We didn't see it. We didn't see it until the public saw it. Had we seen it, we could have undertaken this conversation, the conversation we're having tonight. We could have had this conversation back in September. And conceivably, a great deal of time and effort could have been spared, not to mention money, for the benefit of the students and families served by the Southampton County schools. Again, we will leave to all of you and to your leaders how best to identify who's at fault for that. What we would say, however, is that a culture of collaboration and cooperation, one that isn't animated by a sense of adversarialness, one that isn't animated by intimations of suspicion or misconduct when those intimations are not well founded. A collegial and collaborative atmosphere and culture would improve the situation for the people the institutions exist to serve. That I think concludes the formal part. Do you have any concluding remarks?
No, I would just say again, after January 2nd, both the report and the supporting documents will be made available on the school board website for you to review, and to conduct your own independent review of what we said. There's not a single thing that we've said tonight that we don't believe can be backed up by the documents. So we invite you to read, we invite you to scrutinize, we invite you to form your own opinion as to what story the documents tell. And I can agree completely with Colin if we can help by presenting sort of this report, we can help the school division and the board close this chapter for 2026. Started it.
Thank you. So on behalf of the board, I do want to thank you for coming out tonight. And I do encourage you to read the entire report that will be available on the school division website after January 2nd. But again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for listening. And enjoy the rest of your holidays. So good night.
Good to see you. Here. Y'all have a good night.
No, I live.
Yeah, I do.
But then once you